to Sai Prema Nilayam. Lovely to see everybody here today. Glad you made it. As always, I'll share with you the quotes from Baba, our message from Baba today. Sai Baba says, "When the heart is kept pure, all our thoughts, words, and actions become sweet. When the heart is dedicated to right purposes, all our actions become righteous and our life gets redeemed." Jai Sai Ram. Purifying our hearts is, of course, that is our mission for those of us on the spiritual path. That getting to that amazing place where our hearts are pure and we are connected with Baba. We can hear God's voice within. That's where we all want to end up. And it's a journey, and it takes some training, and there are questions that we ask along the way to help us get there. And probably, as most people in this room at one time or another may have asked, perhaps every human being may have asked themselves, who is God? And why is believing in Him so important? And why is having God being an important part of the fabric of my life? Why does that make everything right? We want to know. We're human beings, after all. We ask these questions. Sai Baba gives us a lot of beautiful examples of who and what God is. And in this case, this is what he says. He says that God is the embodiment of Dharma, right action. He is Dharma itself. Swami says people must dedicate themselves to Dharma and always be engaged in Dharma so that they may live in peace and the world may enjoy peace. One cannot acquire real peace, nor can one gain the grace of the Lord through any means other than having a Dharmic life. Dharma is the foundation for the welfare of all of humanity. It is the truth that is stable for all time. So that's good to know. That's something that we should take note of and really, pay attention to that. But what happens? We ask the question, what happens if we stray away from Dharma? What happens then? Well, Baba says, when Dharma fails to transmute human life, the world is afflicted by agony and fear and tormented by stormy revolutions. When the effulgence of Dharma fails to illumine human relationships, humanity is shrouded in a night of sorrow. Wow, so that's quite serious. So we should always make sure to have Dharma as the basis of everything that we do, and Dharma the basis of all our relationships, so that they can be beautiful and full of peace and joy and love. So then, us being the humans that we are, here's another question. If there really was a God, what would he look like? Sai Baba answers this, and he says, there is no end to the incarnations in which God indulges. He has come down on countless occasions. Sometimes he comes with a part of his glory, sometimes with fuller equipment of splendor, and sometimes he comes for a particular task, and sometimes it's to transform an entire era of time or an entire continent of space. This concept that Baba just described is actually illustrated in Swami's book, the Bhagavata Vahini. It tells the story of the drama enacted by the avatar and the devotees that are drawn towards him. And listening to it promotes the realization of God. Swami says many sages have testified to its efficacy and extolled the Bhagavata, which they have helped preserve for posterity. Okay, so Sai Baba says that we should train ourselves towards God and towards godly disciplines. And when he says this is really about learning and training ourselves towards living a spiritual life and taking a look at that process by how we can grow into living that spiritual life. Now, there's things that come into play. There are our own instincts that come into play. And this is what Baba says on this topic. He says, generally speaking, people get drawn to sense objects, for they are the victims of instincts. Instincts easily seek sense objects. They come along with the body and they aren't derived by any training. The infant seeks milk from the mother, and the newborn calf nestles at the udder. There's no training needed for this. However, for the infant to walk and for the infant to talk, training is necessary, because these actions are not automatic. They are socially prompted by example and by imitation of others. Training is essential even for the proper pursuit of sense pleasures, but it is the wild, untrained search for pleasure that promotes anger, hatred, envy, malice, and conceit. So to train the senses along beneficial lines and hold them under control, certain good disciplines like the repetition of the name, which is japa, meditation, dhyana, fasting, upavasa, worship at dawn and dusk are all essential. But however much their value is praised and their practice recommended, people don't develop a taste for them. This is because the desire for sensory pleasure has struck deep roots in the human heart. When one is asked to do spiritually beneficial acts, one has no inner prompting at all. Still, we shouldn't give up. We shouldn't despair. Until the taste sprouts, the disciplines have to be strictly followed. This taste is the result of training. No one has it at the very beginning, but constant practice will create the zest. The infant doesn't know the taste of milk, but by taking it daily, it develops an attachment for it, which is so deep that when milk is given up and rice is substituted, it starts to protest. But the mother doesn't despair. She persuades the child to take small quantities of rice, of cooked rice, daily. And by this process, the child starts liking rice and gives up milk. Milk was once its natural food, but by practice, rice becomes its natural food. So natural that if no rice is available, even for a single day, the child begins to protest. So there's an example. So too, the sense pleasures are natural at first by means of practice and training and listening to the commendation of the wise. Slowly, the greater and more lasting pleasure derivable from the glories of the Lord and their recapitulation are grasped. And thereafter, one can't exist without that atmosphere, even for a minute. There is nothing as sweet as the experience of listening to the splendor of the Lord. The company of the worldly who chatter about the senses and the sense objects will no longer attract. The company that exults in praising the Lord will draw and hold. Exulting in praising the Lord is actually the real hallmark of the good. Spiritual seekers, sadhakas, and votaries of the Lord. When Baba says votaries, he's talking about people who've made vows to God, who are monks and nuns and take their spiritual work very seriously. They should be judged by this, not by external apparel or appearances. Mixing with people who revel in sensory talk and activities puts one out of court. Instead, spend your time in the company of the godly and be engaged in godly affairs. So being engaged in godly affairs, that's what we do here at Sai Prema Nilayam. This is what takes us step by step closer to God. That was perfect timing. Step by step, closer to God, and there he is. Swami says that we should avoid getting mixed up with the company that is ungodly. Don't see their activities or listen to their accounts. Only those who avoid such ungodly folks and behavior are called Bhagavatas, or God's own. That's what we all want to be called, God's own. So this training is difficult, and it requires discipline, and it takes faith, and that's what we're going to share with you now. It's something about faith. This is a short video from Baba, I think just about 8 minutes long or so. Thank you. And it's all about faith. And then after that, our wonderful young adults are going to come up here and they're going to do a quick Q&A session, topic value of faith. Jai Sai Ram.
Because of the effect of Kali, man is highly intelligent. What's the reason behind it? The reason behind this is the faith is on the decline. As faith is diminishing, man is growing more and more in intelligence.
Saram everyone. So from Swami's words on faith, we'll have a short discussion with some questions and answers that the wise have put a little bit of thought into. And I'll get started with maybe a simple, but maybe the complex question. What does it mean to have faith in God? So anybody feel free to start.
So one thing we talked about when we were thinking about what does it mean to have faith in God, we talked about how faith is covered in a lot of different angles, right? We have to have faith that God not only exists, but that he exists in all beings. So that every time we're looking at anybody or we're looking at any situation, we're looking at God in that situation. And that will allow us to have the ability to make the right decisions whenever we're placed in any situation. As Swami said, like the faith is what allows you to have those virtues and to build those virtues. So having the faith that Swami is not only there, but he's there in everything and everybody allows you to embody those virtues in every situation.
Adding on to that, I think it's also very important to, no matter what the circumstances, to remain steadfast in that faith in God. It's easy to say that, oh, I'm very faithful in God when everything in your life is going according to your plan. But when, it's time for your plan to take the back seat and God's plan is taking the front seat, many of us may not like that at first, or we may not take so kindly to it. So I think that's the real test of faith. A good example of this that comes to my mind is Mirabai. She went through so many struggles in her life, and the reason why she's renowned as such a high devotee of Bhagavan Krishna is because despite whatever was happening in her external world, she remained steadfast in her faith. And she didn't accuse God, or she didn't really say that, oh, because I'm going through so much hardship, I'm going to lose faith.
Yeah, I also want to agree and add on to the point that Shri said that I really resonated with. Swami said something interesting. When you have faith in God, you will get success. But what is the success, right? Success is very different. God's success is different from our success. But I think when we have faith in God, everything becomes a success because we take everything as God's prasadam. It's God's offering to us. And I feel like once we go to that level of faith, then what Swami says is true. If we have faith in God, if we have faith that everything is a success, then it truly is a success. So I think that also goes with the yad bhavam tat bhavati, as you think so it shall be principle that's very powerful.
And I think based off of what Shweta said as well, we have to be ready to accept that anything God gives us is for our highest good. It's our prasadam. And this takes me back to a talk that we had with Arvindana when he was visiting during the conference. He told all of the YAs that we are actors just playing the roles of ourselves in our lives, and that Swami is the director of our lives. And so I think when we think about that concept, the hierarching word that comes to mind for me is surrender. And so having faith in God is being able to surrender to him at any given moment.
So as a follow-up question, we may be actors, but sometimes we really get into the roles, very character actors. And so when I'll follow up on that, when we're clouded by kind of emotion, or we're overly invested in a particular outcome, or maybe it's even reasonable because we work very hard toward a noble, goal. How do you kind of let go of the fact that we aren't the doers or the recipients of the actions that we're undertaking? Any practical tips for this?
I don't know if it's a tip, but I think the answer lies in your question is not overly investing in the outcome, but investing in the process. Investing our energy, our attention, our faith, our love, our devotion in the process, and not thinking that whatever I'm doing is only worth it if I achieve a certain outcome. Instead, when you start thinking that what I'm doing is the outcome, right? Like we're sitting here singing bhajans, what's the outcome? I don't know. But if we think of going to bhajans and putting our faith in God and sharing our devotion to Him in this way that comes easy to us, and so yeah, just enjoying and investing in the process can help us see the outcome, whatever it may be, as quote unquote worth it, right? So that's hard though. It's very hard because it's easy to say the outcome is not in our hands, but it's easier said than done. So enjoying and investing in the process and thinking that Swami is putting us in this situation because he wants us to go through this process, because that is part of life, it's not the outcome. So we're not jumping from outcome to outcome, we're jumping from process to process.
Yeah, I think similar to what Sai said, like something that I've been trying to do personally, and I'm still learning how to do it, is like just not having any expectations. I think we have to let go of those expectations of what we're doing and just offer what we do to Swami, and ask him to work through us, like do good with our hands and our eye, and see good with our eyes and everything, because that's really all that matters now, you know, once you let go of those expectations, it becomes a lot easier to focus on the process, like Sai said.
And I think actually a practical reminder of this is usually if you look back on things in your life, there was always some goal or some outcome you were after, but the thing you remember and where the lessons usually come from and where the enjoyment comes from is in the experience, usually not just that one moment at the end of the road, you know? So it's a good reminder, definitely.
I was just gonna add on to Samiksha's point when she was talking about reducing expectations. It reminds me of the example of how like Swami always emphasizes that this world is temporary. It's something that I try to remind myself if I do find myself attaching too much value into whatever I'm doing, or as you mentioned, like playing too much into the character. And it reminds me of the example of how like, you know, this life is like a movie, or this life is like a dream. I really like the movie example because we can get invested in movies, sure. Like we can even relate to a character. If a character goes through a tragedy, we'll even cry with them. But we know that the movie's gonna end after a certain period of time, and we're gonna walk out of that theater and we're gonna live our own separate lives. So I think in that sense, we should have that form of detachment, saying that, okay, like if I want to, I can cry, I can laugh, I can celebrate, but at the end of the day, like I am just a character. This is not who I actually am.
And to go off of Shree's point, which I completely agree with, I think we can take that and apply it back to our actions and not get overly invested in our actions, or not take too much possession over our actions and that outcome, and just remembering that whether the outcome is positive or the outcome is negative, or it's not going according to the way we want it to, that we just have that level of like equanimity and detachment.
I just want to share one of my favorite quotes real quick, which is, when there's an appointment, there's always a disappointment. So, but you know, it's so apparent, you know, when we always expect something and it doesn't happen. That's what like creates this sadness, which, you know, our true nature isn't to be sad. It's to kind of let go of everything and let God. So, but it's definitely a lot harder to practice in real life.
So at the very end there, he mentioned self-confidence. And I'm curious, what's your thought from what he said on how faith relates to self-confidence?
So just, I'm gonna try to frame it, help me if I lose track. But so faith in God is, so much of faith in God is about faith in ourselves, right? When Swami says, I'm in you and within you. That if I am an embodiment of Swami, who gives me how do I have the authority to not have faith in myself, if I may, right? And so much of that comes down to, I don't know if self-confidence is the word, but authenticity, just truly being our true selves, whatever values Swami has taught us to embody, whatever Swami has made me capable of, and whatever he's put me in this world for, my duty is to have confidence in that duty and do it, right? Despite all the struggles and so on. So when I don't have faith in myself, or when I don't have confidence in myself, I'm basically saying I don't have faith in Swami, I don't have confidence in Swami, right? So kind of circle back to just being your authentic self, being vulnerable to be yourself and do what you've been put in this world to do. And it only gets easier when you have faith in yourself and in Swami. And there's really no other way out.
And I think this is where sadhana comes in, because I mean recently this has been something I'm realizing, which seems obvious, but you have to realize it, I guess, which is that that if I don't take the time to connect to Swami in whatever way I can, then the fear or the anxiety or the expectations or desires are louder than my true self, you know? And so if I don't keep anchoring myself to that point day by day by day, now, you know, what am I listening to? I don't know what I'm acting off of. And so that's, you know, that's what I've been working on. Sorry?
Whose voice is it?
Right, exactly. So, go ahead.
We are all the divine beings born having a human existence. So if we remember that we are the Atmic principle, having all these experiences based on the karma theory or based on the evolution, transformation to attain the liberation, right? We are all on this journey of spiritual path to attain liberation. So we are being placed in situations, we have been encountered with different things in our lives just for our own growth. When I say I, the mind consciousness, sometimes is more, sometimes is less, based on our connection with our inner self. So the more we stay in touch with our inner self, the less the mind and the emotions play in the outer world. But unfortunately, due to our desires or vasanas from previous births, we oscillate between the mind and our true innate nature, which is the Atma. So as we progress in this life, based on our sadhana and based on our karmic experiences, the I, the mind, oscillates like a pendulum. Sometimes the oscillation is to an extent that we can grab it and bring it to that equilibrium state quicker. Sometimes the oscillation is 360 degrees angle. This is all merely due to attachments, due to selfish interests, due to our karmic baggage that we are carrying. So all we can do is, Swami, I don't know. I have no control over my emotions, nor my desires. I place myself at your feet. It is you who have to carry me through these worldly experiences. Of course, you may ask for me to experience the emotions of life. That also I surrender to you, because that is necessary for the soul growth. If we do not have the experience of that pain, we will not enjoy the joy that He has come to give us. So it is necessary for us to be there to know where we need to be. So it's all in His divine Leela, whatever we go through. We think we are going through it, but it is Him who is making us go through it. Because He knows what is best for each one of us.
Beautiful. Yeah, that reminds me of one of my favorite Swami quotes, which is, pleasure is an interval between two pains, which is a hard one to live by when the pain is happening, but it's a good one. So I think we have a couple minutes left, and so I want to bring up a point that was brought up. Oh, sorry, did you have something to say? Yeah,
no,
please.
I just want to quickly add to what Akka just said. Also, in like some of my darkest times, I've had the thought of I'm alone in this pain, and then I've had to remember Swami saying, it's not you who's feeling the pain, it's me who's feeling the pain through you. So which to me the reframe always helps is like, I'm not in this alone, Swami is with me. We are both feeling the pain together, and we're both feeling the joy together, and it definitely helps to not feel too great about yourself, if I may. Just thinking that's just your experience, so yeah, it helps to think that way.
Yeah, I just want to add one quick thing. I really also love this quote that's like, Swami, there will always be pain in our life, but we don't have to suffer. And, I feel like if we have faith in Swami, like, we can essentially not suffer through the pain, but just take it, even with a smile on our face.
So the last thing that I thought would be a good place to close, that somebody had brought up this point when we were discussing this ahead of time, was on the note of practical ways that faith seems like a big word sometimes, day to day, but then it can translate into these smaller kind of surrender, like we said, or acceptance, or patience. Someone brought up gratitude as an exercise of faith in the day-to-day world. So can somebody provide some thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think what we were talking about was when we're in the real world,